the big assumptions cause the counterproductive behavior, as I said. And it's really what you believe to be true about the world and the way that you exist in it. So all of those limiting beliefs that come out of your mouth about what's true and what's not true, that's just your perspective. That's what you think is true and not true. But if you actually opened up yourself to other possibilities, and maybe if those big assumptions that you believed unconsciously had some holes poked in them, you might have other beliefs. Hey, you leader, entrepreneur, business owner, solopreneur, whatever you call yourself, we know you're a visionary business builder, wealth seeker looking to combine a passion for doing good with leading consciously. It's time to shift from a traditional focus of pure wealth accumulation to one that integrates well-being and fulfillment. This is the Conscious Edge podcast, and I'm Alicia St. Germain, entrepreneur and coach. Along with my friend and wellness advocate, Jonathan Duggar, we're diving into what it means to embody radical self-acceptance while still evolving to lead with compassion and kindness. We're sharing our own experiences and expertise as we unpack imposter syndrome, perfectionism, procrastination, and all the other things that lead to burnout and keep you from experiencing pure joy, business growth, and maximum impact. This is a safe and supportive space to explore what it means to be a human creating wealth and building a business. You're here for a purpose, and it's time to shine your light. So here we go. Okay, so here's another solo episode. I'm by myself again today. And last week in episode number 5, I actually went through 4 unhealthy goal habits that I commonly see and have experienced myself. And I told you that I was going to be coming back to you with a little bit more about how we get underneath these behaviors, these things that drive us to do these unhealthy behaviors. These are things like perfectionism, worrying about losing it all, even when we have a business that's working really well for us, fears of failure, fears of not being capable of handling everything that's coming your way, just all the things we went into these unhealthy habits, and then what the fears are that tend to be underneath those habits and what the feelings are that are there. So I wanted to go into today really what we do about it, how we dig underneath that. And all of this really started for me. I was training people how to invest in real estate, and I taught them a strategy called wholesale, where I was teaching them how to find distressed properties and distressed homeowners who were willing to sell their properties at a discount, and they would then negotiate a price, secure the property under contract, and then if they chose not to purchase the property themselves for investment purposes, then they would sell their rights to purchase that property to another investor, and then they would make a small fee for that. Well, as I was teaching that, and of course, associated with a lot of other investors who were also teaching individuals other types of strategies around foreclosure and lease options and different kinds of investing strategies that could be done with real estate, one of the things that I noticed is that people were spending tens of thousands of dollars in these alternative education type programs to learn how to invest in real estate, literally with the intention to become financially free and to build wealth for themselves. And a majority of the people could not do it. And it wasn't because the strategies didn't work or because the market wasn't right. The market was primed for it at that time. It was really coming down to people were getting in their own way. A majority of people got in their own way. And I really saw one of 2 things happen. One, they did none to 1 or 2 deals, and then they never did a deal again. Or 2, they implemented very fast, very hard, and built a lot of properties and maybe bought properties that they should not have purchased and completely overworked themselves. And then when the market changed or shifted, they could not shift with it in 2008 and they lost everything. And then they went back to working 9-to-5 jobs. So they did not stay in real estate long term. And that's not everybody, but a very small percentage of those individuals actually stuck with real estate and changed their life and became financially free. And it didn't feel really great to me to know that people were spending the kind of money they were spending on training and then not really getting the long-term results that they were looking for. And so I happened to be sitting at my desk one day and I opened up a magazine from my gym and I saw this tiny 1-page, maybe it was 2 pages, article about why people struggle to change. And I read through it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so amazing. And it was talking about how you can have a goal, but then you do all of these things that are working against that goal, all these behaviors that you do that work against that goal. So these are things like if you are scrolling on social media when you really ought to be working on your business. This is the procrastination, overanalyzing, getting into analysis paralysis, not asking for help. I call it rage cleaning. Like you feel out of control. And so you just start cleaning everything in your house. And all of these things that really work against our best intentions to reach our goals, right? And so it was tracking from those behaviors and then into what was the fear or the feeling that these behaviors were trying to relieve. So you have a goal and you have this counter goal, this need to relieve fears and uncomfortable feelings or anytime you feel unsafe. And then it talked about what was the belief, or we call it big assumption, that people would make that would cause them to believe those things to be true, to feel for those behaviors that you were doing to be necessary to protect yourself. And I was like, the heavens parted, the clouds parted, and the heavens shined down, and the light lit up in the room, and the angel choir sang. I was like, this is it. This is why people are struggling to get their real estate businesses at a place where they can be financially free and actually enjoy it and have this joy and fulfillment that comes with building financial freedom and wealth. This is it. And so then I went on this entire journey of becoming certified in this methodology. So I thought I would take today to explain what we do at the Conscious Edge and what I do with my clients in my program, The Exponential Entrepreneur, and give credit to the creators of this and tell you how to get more information. So this process, this coaching methodology that I use is called Immunity to Change. There's a book called Immunity to Change by Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy, and I'll link it in the show notes for you. But it's called Immunity to Change, How to Overcome It and Unlock the Potential in Yourself and Your Organization. And so as I was reading this, I thought, okay, first of all, I need to go learn more about this. So I went and I got certified. And this methodology that Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy created, it's their life's work and research, as Robert Keegan is both of them are Harvard professors, or at the time were Harvard professors, if they may not still be now. But this was their research and everything that they've done. And Robert Keegan is a psychologist and trained in psychology. And so it's psychology based, it's heavily researched and backed by science. And it's this beautiful process of really helping, especially really analytical individuals or people who tend not to spend a lot of time thinking about their feelings, which is a lot of high achiever doers. They really connect into the feelings that drive counterproductive behavior. And so I went to become a facilitator and learn about their process that they use to discover what we call big assumptions. And the big assumptions cause the counterproductive behavior, as I said. And it's really what you believe to be true about the world and the way that you exist in it. So all of those limiting beliefs that come out of your mouth about what's true and what's not true, that's just your perspective. That's what you think is true and not true. But if you actually opened up yourself to other possibilities, and maybe if those big assumptions that you believed unconsciously had some holes poked in them, you might have other beliefs. You might be able to say other things or different things. And so I went and I became certified as an immunity to change coach. And this was heavily used. I want to say this. This is a methodology that is heavily used more in a corporate setting. But when I saw it, I was like, this is exactly why entrepreneurs who are building businesses are struggling, either struggling to get started, or if they're already started, everybody hits a plateau at some point in their business. And it really comes back to, what are they believing? What are their big assumptions? And what are they trying to protect themselves from? That's the big thing, is what are you trying to protect yourself from? A lot of people call it self-sabotage, and I think that has a really negative connotation. So I much prefer this methodology's use of the word self-protection, because the whole idea of it is that it's a good thing until it's not, right? It works for you until it doesn't. And so it's really, when I went into this, it wasn't something that was being promoted or used with entrepreneurs. It was being used in corporations. And so I went through the trainings, and many of the people that were with me in the cohort as we went through were people who held HR positions. There were people who were coaches, but they were more executive coaches for corporate settings, or they worked with a lot of corporations and were looking for ways to create organizational change and behavior changes within individuals and organizations. But I really saw the value in taking this and applying it to entrepreneurs. And it's just not something that is done. So I consider what I'm doing to be groundbreaking, really to bring something very valuable to entrepreneurs that ordinarily they might not even know to go look for, or that it even existed. So I want to explain to you a little bit more about the concept of this immunity to change and how we use it. So the idea here is that the root cause of our unhealthy goal habits, the things that work against our goals, is really an overactive psychological immune system. So if you think of an immune system, right, it's there to protect you. And it's a beautiful thing, right, that we have these ways as humans, if we are attacked by viruses, bacteria, anything like that, like our body's going to go to work and it's going to fight that thing off, and it's going to protect us from this dangerous thing. So our brain has an immune system as well. And it is hardwired to unconsciously protect us from dangerous situations. Now, this hardwiring comes from your upbringing. It comes from the things that you experienced as a child. It comes from your epigenetics. So like things that happen to your parents and your grandparents, that gets genetically expressed in your genes. And so that develops your personality and how that is expressed. It comes from the things that people have said to you and what your parents believed and how they raised you, or other caregivers raised you, or teachers. And so you created this entire framework for protecting yourself from dangerous or perceived dangerous situations. And so at all times, your brain is taking in all of this information from around you, and it's scanning for danger. And so it has these assumptions about what is true and what's not true about the world and how you exist in it. And then that accordingly drives your thoughts, feelings, and actions. So the problem happens when your situation has changed. You have now stepped into adulthood. You may identify yourself as a leader or a business owner, but you're driven from your heart. Your heart and your brain are like, I am meant consciously for more. I am meant to create this business that is going to serve people and leave a mark and help create wealth for my family and for myself, and even pass it down for generations. And so your situation may be very different today than it was when you were a child, but your brain doesn't know that. It doesn't know that things are different now, and it doesn't care. It's like, hey, I see you out there trying to be visible and tell people what you're doing. And that feels a little like that time when you were in fourth grade and you stood up in front of everybody and ultimately ended up being made fun of, right? So your brain's like, oh, this feels familiar. I don't think we should do this. And so sometimes you know you're supposed to do something to grow your business. There are things and decisions you're supposed to make. Maybe you're supposed to be more visible. Maybe it's making more offers to people or whatever it is, right? That you're supposed to do, and you don't do it. And you're like, I don't know why I don't do it, but every time I'm supposed to do it, I find something else to do instead. Or I hesitate, or I don't follow up, or whatever it is. And you're like, I know I'm supposed to, but I just don't. This is because you have what we call an immunity to change. As you try to change your behavior from what feels safe, your brain says this is dangerous. And so immunity to change is kind of like an autoimmune disorder, right? The brain turns and attacks itself, and it's not acting in your best interest anymore, even though it thinks it is. And it makes it very hard for you to achieve your goals, and you plateau because of the beliefs that you have. These are things like, if I make an offer, I'm a sleazy salesperson. Or if I highlight myself as an expert, then I'm going to be perceived as pompous and egotistical, and then I'll end up rejected. If I am visible, then I will be targeted, or I'll be rejected, or people will see me as a fraud. All of those little beliefs, and you might not know exactly what yours are. We have a whole process that we use, a mapping process that Robert Keegan and Lisa Leahy developed in using this immunity to change, that we go through and we map out exactly what those big assumptions are that you're making that may not actually be true in all cases. They may not be true at all. Or they may be true, but at least you understand that you can't hold your big assumption as true and go after that goal that you're going after because they're in conflict with each other. And so we have a whole mapping system that we use. In fact, I'll link it here in the show notes for you if you would like to go through and just map out a goal and see, well, what big assumption could I be making? I actually have an on-demand mapping process that you can go through to see what big assumptions you're actually making that are causing you to hold back and self-protect. And so what happens is when we have this immune system or these big assumptions that we've identified, what we end up doing in the Exponential Entrepreneur using this methodology, there's other methodologies that we combined and use to help you reach your goals, whatever they might be. But this is one methodology that we use in that program. And so what we do is we actually explore the big assumptions that you're making about the world and the way that you exist in it that need to be overturned, that need to have holes poked in it in order for you to get to your next level. Most people, when they go after goals, they're taught like willpower, accountability, you have the skills and all of the mantras, positive thoughts, prayer, all of those things work as long as there isn't a self-protective mechanism like your immunity to change getting in the way. all those things work better if you actually have awareness over your unconscious thoughts that are driving your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. And so what we do is we really work to rewire the brain, if you will, to learn something different about that big assumption. Like, is it really true that if you're visible, you'll always be a target? The reality is being online, and this is something that Jonathan and I had to really work through, was we're going to do this podcast, and it's possible that someone is not going to like what we have to say, and then they're going to say mean things. And does that really mean the end of the world for us? Are we really in danger for trying to help some people? Our little child might say, ooh, being rejected and having mean things said to you, that's not safe. But is it really? So we get to actually question if that's true or not true. And that's really the big piece that comes in rewiring the brain, is seeing what else is possible besides this black and white vision of the world and the way that it works. What else is possible? And what could I achieve if I believed something else? Like if I believed that when I act in integrity and I am my most authentic self and I come from a place of love, that the right people will hear me and it will make a difference in their life, and they will be grateful because they can then step into making a difference in the world in their unique way. And that will create a ripple effect. Like that's a completely different belief, right? And both can be true. Like I could be rejected and I could be made fun of and I could have judgments cast on me, but I don't have to let them land on me and define me. But that's what we're doing. That's what's happening. And our brain will let that stuff land on us and it will make us play small. And so we have to look at what are the other things. We have to show our brains evidence that there are other things that are also true, that are much more fulfilling ways of being, much more joyful ways of being than us acting from a place of fear. And it really is just trying to keep you safe. So the hope for you, as you understand that you have this immune system that is there for self-protection, is that you shift away from what is wrong with me, feeling not enough, being frustrated with yourself, having your self-esteem be tanking or being hit, having the self-doubt, to understanding, oh, there's this thing in me that tries to protect me. And because I know it's there, I can acknowledge it and say, okay, great. Thank you for taking care of me. Thank you for trying to watch out for me. But also, we don't need that right now. We're okay. Everything's safe. There's no lion, tigers, or bears trying to eat me. I'm safe. And now we can move forward. So it keeps you out of that hesitation, the procrastination, the perfectionism, because you have this awareness that this system of self-protection even exists. And so as we go through and I'm coaching my clients, they're discovering all the ways this immune system holds them back. They're thinking about what's possible if they were to believe something else. And then one of my favorite parts, and probably one of the most transformational parts of overturning your immunity to change coaching methodology, is that we actually do what's called testing. So instead of trying to use willpower or do it scared, all of those things, which are fine, and that's okay, that I don't have anything that works for you is great. Anything that gets you into action and gets you towards your goals is great. I just want to do it in a way that doesn't constantly have you on edge and activating your cortisol and putting your body into stress and fight or flight. A little bit of stress is good because it actually helps us perform and our brain gets sharper and we get honed in and super focused when we're a little bit scared or a little bit stressed. But being in a constant state of stress is not good for your body. It is not supportive of you as a whole human. So what we do is we take your behavior change and we look at very small individual slight behavior changes that are safe, that like maybe it stretches you a little outside of your comfort zone, but not a lot. And then we ask questions that help us inform our brain as to how much of our big assumption is true and how much of it is not. Like, what about what we believe is true? And what about what we believe is not true? Or what might we believe instead based on our behavior changes? So instead of us focusing on hitting a goal, we actually focus on unraveling the thing that is getting in the way of our goal. And as a byproduct, we actually move closer to the goal. The difference here is approaching change and approaching behaviors that will help you hit your goal from a place of curiosity versus a place of digging in and just doing the work and doing it scared so that you're constantly on edge. So I find it to be a very gentle and safe and supportive way of really reprogramming what you believe. So it gives us a way to realign our beliefs and our big assumptions so that they coincide with what we want in our lives and what our soul purposes are. Because these protective systems are really layered over top of maybe what you're here for, what you're feeling called to do. And so it holds you back. If you didn't have this immune system to protect you, certainly there'd be times when you were in danger. We don't want to completely get rid of all fear. That's one of the things people think is that the opposite of fear is no fear. And I'd venture to say the opposite of fear is courage, right? So living in fear versus courage, right? That's what overcomes it. Whenever I hear someone say like they want to be able to do something without fear, it raises a red flag for me because I'm like, well, wait, hang on. Fear has a purpose. It's to double check yourself. But when fear stops you from moving towards your vision and you can't figure out a way through it, now fear's a problem. But the absence of fear is reckless. We want to be able to use our fear and use our self-protection in a way that says, okay, let me double check myself. And now I want to move forward. So I'm going to link for you in the show notes if you want to go to www.consciousedge.com/freebie. That's a quick link to get to my Immunity to Change mapping workshop on demand. And what that'll do is it'll take you from a goal, something that you're looking to achieve, and help you map out your counterproductive behaviors, the things that work against your goal, into the fears that you have and why you have those fears. Like, what's the big assumption that causes you to have those fears, that leads you to act the way you do, that works against reaching your goals? So I'll link that for you here as well. And then from there, I'd love to hear from you. When you receive that, you'll have an opportunity. Then you could just reply to that email and let me know what you discover for your big assumption and maybe how that's going to help you hit your goals now that you know that it's there. It's very enlightening to be able to see what your big assumption is. And then you could start thinking differently. You could start making choices in a different way because you actually know why you do the things that you do. So that's just a little bit about one of the methodologies that we use in the Exponential Entrepreneur. And we also are accepting applications. So you can always, if you want help to work through your map and you want to go through the process of rewiring your brain and be able to start hitting your goals in a way that supports you as a whole human, you can do that work with me in the Exponential Entrepreneur. It's a beautiful community, and I'd love the opportunity to talk to you more about that. So with that being said, I am finished for today. I will see you back here next week, and I am sending you so much love. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Edge podcast. Make sure you subscribe And take a moment to be kind and share this episode with someone you care about. Leave a review to help us bring more compassionate leaders building businesses and creating wealth to the table. And for show notes, head over to consciousedge.com/podcast. This podcast and the linked materials are presented solely for general information, educational, and entertainment purposes and should not be taken as personal or medical advice or any kind of mental health treatment. Please consult a medical or mental health professional if you feel you need such services. Please be advised that all investing and entrepreneurial endeavors involve risk, and the use of the education and information on this podcast and linked materials is at the user's own risk.
This podcast is part of the Sound Advice FM network. Sound Advice FM, women's voices amplified.